Today, we delve into the enigmatic shadows of the Bronze Age, at a place shrouded in mystery, the Tollense Valley Battlefield. Over 3,200 years ago, in the serene Tollense Valley of northern Germany, a massive, violent clash erupted. Thousands of warriors from unknown groups locked in a battle whose purpose remains hidden in the mists of time. With over 12,000 human bones, horses, and unique artifacts unearthed, the Tollense Valley speaks of a war unprecedented in scale for its time. But who were these warriors? What drove them to this deadly confrontation? Join us as we journey back to this Bronze Age mystery, piecing together clues from bones, weapons, and the silent whispers of history. This is Historical Quarrels, and our exploration into the Tollense Valley enigma begins now. All right, welcome back, everyone. It's Historical Quarrels. I'm your host, Tyler Eckhart. Today, we are getting back to a more traditional episode by exploring the Battle of Tollense Valley. The battle and its archaeological site is still being investigated and explored to this very day. It has been called one of the 50 most important archaeological discoveries modern historians have found in this past century. So part of the reason for its importance is how it has impacted our understanding of Northern Bronze Age Europe, thought to be primarily a peaceful trading/farming culture. But this battle presents new evidence that completely turns that idea on its head. So today we will go over the battle and what has been found, and then we'll go over the theorized combatants, their history, and potential reasons as to why they fought, as well as my own research I conducted to see if I could find out who the potential combatants were. But the DNA testing done on the remains indicate people from all over Europe were involved, which makes this battle all the more fascinating. So let's go back in time and explore a bit, shall we? You are listening to Historical Quarrels. So the Battle of Tollense Valley took place around 1200 BCE. And I found this battle was best described on science.org from an article by Andrew Curry. He writes, about 3,200 years ago, two armies clashed at a river crossing near the Baltic Sea. The confrontation can't be found in any history books. The written word didn't become common in these parts for another 2,000 years. But this was no skirmish between local clans. Thousands of warriors came together in a brutal struggle, perhaps fought on a single day, using weapons crafted from wood, flint, and bronze, a metal that was then the height of military technology. Struggling to find solid footing on the banks of the Tollense River, a narrow ribbon of water that flows through the marshes of northern Germany toward the Baltic Sea, the armies fought hand to hand, maiming and killing with war clubs, spears, swords, and knives. Bronze and flint-tipped arrows were loosed at close range, piercing skulls and lodging deep into the bones of young men. Horses belonging to high-ranking warriors crumpled into the muck, fatally speared. Not everyone stood their ground in the melee. Some warriors broke and ran and were struck down from behind. When the fighting was through, hundreds lay dead, littering the swampy valley. Some bodies were stripped of their valuables and left bobbing in shallow ponds. Others sank to the bottom, protected from plundering by a meter or two of water. Heat slowly settled over the bones, and within centuries, the entire battle was forgotten. And so, usually in this podcast, when I describe the end of a battle, the main show is over, and then I go into my thoughts about the subject and about 20 minutes of me rambling about life and other things in general. But not today. Today I will be rambling for 90 minutes, and I'm going to be going over things like how my foot hurts, how I woke up and I felt like this lump in my butt that I thought was going to be a tumor, but it ended up not being a tumor. But then I wasn't sure that it wasn't actually a tumor. So then I went and I paid about $1,200 to get it tested at multiple different hospitals. And they all told me it was not a tumor, but I'm still a little unconvinced about whether or not it's a tumor. And I'm going to keep talking about, obviously kidding. I'm not going to do that. No, instead we will be piecing together information about Bronze Age Europe to try and paint a clearer picture as to what the hell actually went on here. To do that, we need to go over what is currently understood about Bronze Age Europe, what cultures and tribes were around and active at the time, and what conflicts were known to have happened in other nearby areas that may have bled over and affected this one. So let's set the stage here. This was a time that was far from simple. Peaceful era that it's often imagined to be is not one that it appears to actually have been. This period is marked by significant advancements in metalworking, social complexities, and, as we're beginning to realize, much more warfare than previously thought. So the groups that were active during this time in Northern Europe, where the battle takes place, were the unearthed culture. I have no idea if I pronounced that right. I'm probably not. So if someone knows how to pronounce that, let me know. But this culture was known for their metalwork and trade. We also potentially have the Lusatian culture, who were the descendants of the influential Yamnaya further north. And we may also consider the Nordic Bronze Age cultures, whose read time skills and network could have extended their influence far and wide. They may have been a part of this battle as well. Moving on, we really can't ignore the complex tapestry overall, though, of the tribes in Central and Eastern Europe, some influenced by the corded ware culture. They might have been part of the broader Indo-European expansion, while others could have had distinct local origins or even ties to groups as far afield as the steppes of Asia, bringing with them different practices and technologies as well, which would explain what with the varied weapons and metalwork that was discovered on this battlefield. So, conflicts of the era. This is primarily due to tin. Tin was a big deal back then. So the main conflicts that were going on was usually just due to tin trade and people wanting more tin, or like areas with more tin, and so they'd go fight for it. So the movement of this was vital for society and vital for civilizations, as it was the main component for making bronze, which was, all of their tools, weapons, everything was made out of bronze back then. And so trying to control tin routes was especially important. And Tollense Valley may have happened to have been part of a tin trading route, which again then leads to more like, oh, okay, so that kind of makes sense why they were fighting. They wanted control of this tin trading route. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other cultures. We'll go over just the main Bronze Age cultures in Europe. We'll start with the Aegean civilizations. I know that they are far away from northern Germany in particular, but their influence did and was said to have spread far and wide. Who knows how far it actually spread? We'll go with the Minoan civilization first, which would have been around during the time because their fall wasn't until 1100 BCE. Minoan civilization started around 2600 BCE, lasted till 1100 BCE. This was one of the first advanced civilizations in Europe. They were known for their impressive palaces, such as the famous site at Knossos or Knossos. The Minoans developed a complex society with significant artistic and architectural achievements, especially for their time. It's crazy to think like back in 4,000 years ago, these guys were building these huge ass palaces and like complex structures. Most of the time then again, the Greeks, you kind of attribute a lot of like architectural masterworks to them anyways, but still, it's just crazy that they're doing that with what I would think was like Oonga Boonga, people essentially with, clubs, trying to figure that out. And they did it. But more importantly than that, they engaged in extensive trade, connecting Crete with other parts of the Mediterranean, including Egypt, the Aegean Islands, and the Near East. This trade network could have facilitated the spread of ideas, technologies, and cultural practices, contributing to this broader tapestry of the Bronze Age in Europe. And the reason why I keep saying this is because for a long time, and historians, essentially, this is not going to ever be directly stated, but essentially made it seem like during the Bronze Age, Northern Europe and some of the other civilizations there or cultures there did not have a lot of intermingling with cultures in the East or, like with people in Asia, and they essentially had no idea about each other. However, as I think it's the Kurgan hypothesis, and this is pre-Bronze Age, but essentially proved, well, I wouldn't say proved, but they they're like, well, don't you think it's weird that like the Polish people have like similarities in their language compared to, like these other people? And then essentially like trace back through like language study and like how the languages would have like developed and evolved over time, trace back like routes of people. And they figured out where the Proto-Indo-European like homeland was by doing that. And so it demonstrated a group of people that would spread, expand, and settle in vast parts of Europe. And they would have been connected to those other cultures near Asia, near the Turks, like Turkish people who would have had even more connections to the East, and then also to around back again to Egypt and to the Mediterranean, demonstrating how connected humanity really is. Continuing on, though, one of the most remarkable aspects of the Minoan civilization was their maritime prowess. As expert sailors, the Minoans established trade routes that spanned much of the Mediterranean. This naval capability not only bolstered their economy, but also potentially allowed for the spread of Minoan influence and perhaps even their presence far beyond Crete. While there is no direct evidence linking the Minoans to the Tollense Valley yet, or other cultures really yet, the maritime activities could have indirectly influenced the regions around the Baltic through the transmission of cultural practices and technologies along these trade routes. Because as these ideas spread from one trade route to another, that other civilization could have had a trade route that connected to a different culture. That culture could have been trading with other people, could have led back. And so the understanding of like, oh, hey, this is how we can take tin and, heat it up and smash it together with these other metal and make really cool, nice weapons. And, stuff like that. And that's essentially what would have happened. And the Minoans had one of the biggest trade routes and cultural exchange possibilities to have facilitated that trade of an idea, to then have allowed these other cultures to also have bronze weapons like they had in this battle. So for the Minoans, in terms of military technology, there's a very limited specific evidence about their warfare, as their art and archaeology depict a society more focused on trade and culture than on conflict. However, the Minoans were also skilled metalworkers, particularly in bronze, which was very critical to this era, as it's called the Bronze Age. It'd be weird if they didn't work with bronze during the Bronze Age. Their metalworking skills, possibly disseminated through trade and interaction, these could have influenced weaponry used in battles, again, like those at the Tollense Valley. These metallurgical skills might have been part of this larger transfer of knowledge across Europe, and definitely would have helped contribute to the development of more advanced weapons and tools in other areas. Not only this, but the Minoan writing system, such as Linear A, which is still undeciphered, and Linear B, that was used later by the Mycenaeans to write an earlier form of Greek, reflect the complexity of their society. Again, there's no direct link between Minoan script and the cultural groups involved in this Tollense Valley battle. But the development and spread of writing systems throughout Europe illustrate how interconnected all these societies and cultures were. But again, it's like a 50-50 on whether, not even really a 50-50. I'm more in the camp of they more than likely, like everybody kind of influenced each other. Most certainly the oldest civilization influenced the younger civilizations. So we also have the Mycenaean civilization, which was around 1600 BCE to 1100 BCE as well. They were known for their fortified palaces, such as those at Mycenae, Tyrrhenes, and Pylos. They were a warrior society and often associated with the legendary accounts of Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. They were direct inheritors of the cultural and technological achievements of the Minoan civilization, yet they developed their own distinct identity and they were much more militaristic and of a hierarchical structure. Which kind of indicates. And again, I say the Minoans ended in 1100, and this is mostly because the Mycenaeans inherited and kind of continued it, but became more of like it's like the difference between Athens and Sparta, where Athens is viewed as less of the war people and Sparta is. It's kind of similar with the Minoans being viewed as, less of like the war people and the Mycenaeans as, the fighting people. But yeah, they these guys used linear B script for administrative purposes and and their writings. They controlled the Mediterranean trade networks as well. The Hittites and the Levantine cultures could have facilitated the spread of theirs into areas up towards the Tollense Valley. And that's kind of it for the Greeks, the Bronze Age over there. I'm going to not go way too in depth there. I just kind of wanted to point out those two and how advanced they were and how they could have been interconnected into this like huge tapestry over here. We also have the Unetise culture. This culture flourishing in Central Europe from 2300 BCE to 1600 BCE is how long they lasted. This was a very significant phase in the early Bronze Age, centered in what are now Germany, Poland, and Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Austria. The Unetise culture is characterized by its advanced metalworking, particularly again in bronze, as everyone else was, and its role in the development of trade networks across Europe. So, the people here were skilled metalworkers, including weapons, tools, and jewelry, reflecting a high degree of craftsmanship. So they not only like made tools and weapons, but also, stuff just to wear to have fun, like little armbands and rings, which is, again, kind of indicates that either their descendants or someone very closely related to them were involved in the Tollense Valley, as many rings and armbands of similar bronze work were found in the Tollense Valley Battlefield. But their expertise in bronze not only signifies technological advancement, but also indicates a well-developed trade network. They were involved in the long-distance exchange of raw materials like tin and copper, which connected them to other parts of Europe, including the British Isles and the Mediterranean. And such networks could have facilitated these cultural exchanges again, influenced regions far from the Unetise core area, potentially including the area around the Tollense Valley. They could have been interacting with the Proto-Nords as well. Their culture is also marked by a very significant social stratification. They, as evidenced by rich grave goods found in burials, suggesting more of a hierarchy with elite warrior classes. This social stratification implies the existence of organized groups capable of concerted military efforts, much like those that would have been required in the large-scale battles, such as the one at Tollense Valley. And to demonstrate how large the battle was, right now historians currently think it was around 5,000 people involved in this battle, which I know doesn't sound like a lot. That sounds more like a skirmish for most wars like humans would do later on. Back then, that was nuts. I'm talking, that was like, you got everybody. You essentially became a king of like a bunch of tribes in order to get that many people to fight for you. It was nuts. So, yeah, it's kind of wild here. But this culture, which again may have disseminated into other cultures in the surrounding areas and influenced the Lusatian or Yamnaya culture, or the Urnfield culture. This could possibly be why there was this military warfare set up, and how they were able to, like, it explains why these cultures were able to assemble such a large army, and it's because of this culture being an influencer essentially in the area. They were the big YouTuber. They were the PewDiePie of their day, or I don't know who's the biggest YouTuber nowadays. Who's like super popular? I want to say Jake. No, well, I wouldn't say popular, but more like infamous would be like the Paul brothers. But I don't know. Yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter. But just think again. They're the ones who kind of started it. So okay, like PewDiePie, they're essentially one of the bigger YouTubers for their day, and Urnfield would be like I don't know. Well, Jacksepticeye kind of started Markiplier, or someone who then continued their PewDiePie's, I guess, like style or like video game, or I don't know, just a culture, the culture onward. Okay. So PewDiePie is the Unitise, and then Markiplier is the Urnfield culture. And for those of you who don't know who those people are, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like at that point, just Google them. Okay. Look at them up. They're big YouTubers. But for those of you who do get it, then you're probably my age and you've been on the internet long enough to know, and you got that reference right away. But moving forward, sorry that I'm rambling a bit. Moving forward. So the geographic location of the Unitise culture places it close to the Tollense Valley. This proximity raises the possibility that its technological and cultural influence reached these northern regions. The spread of bronze technology and related warfare techniques would have played a role in shaping the nature of conflicts in these areas, as it would have been demonstrated through their culture to the other various cultures that would spring up, or civilizations or societies and tribes that would spring up in that area. So through its trade and interactions, they likely played a much broader a role in the broader cultural dynamics of the Bronze Age in Europe. And the decline of the Unitise culture around 1600 BCE was part of a transition to more regionally diverse Bronze Age cultures in Central Europe. The cultural shifts and fragmentation following the Unitise period could have contributed to the diverse cultural landscape encountered in later periods, such as the time during that of the Tollense Valley Battlefield or battle, and kind of shows why these cultures would have been separated in 400 years from their fall, been warring with each other. I don't know, it could have been like, hey, 400 years ago, my great-great-great-granddaddy fought your great-great-granddaddy in the Unitise culture civil war, and that was still, the blood was still a-brewing, and they were still angry. It's just a theory, a game theory, since I was talking about YouTubers. Okay. Actually kind of going back in time now, but this is also a very important culture to talk about, especially since there were horses in this battlefield. We need to talk about the Indo-European Yamanaya culture that started around 3300 BCE, lasted till about 2500 BCE. They were flourishing in the Pontic-Caspian steppe region from around, again, 3300 BCE. This is a key culture in understanding early Bronze Age in Europe. The Yamanaya people are widely recognized for their significant role in the diffusion of Indo-European languages and cultures across a vast area of Europe and Asia. I'm talking like all those like freaky like Slavic languages. It's these guys. I say freaky. I just, again, sometimes it's harsh on my throat when I try and speak it. But it's harsh. I had a coworker who spoke Russian, and it sounded scary all the time, but also cool. Sorry if your main language is Russian. I'm not gonna judge you, I guess, or like a Slavic in origin at all. It's just not like just like it's hard to say. Hard to say for me because of my soft tongue, my soft Latin tongue. The Yamanaya culture is most notably associated with the spread of these languages, a process that involved extensive migrations. Genetic studies have shown a substantial genetic turnover in Central and Western Europe during the late Neolithic and early Bronze Age, coinciding with the spread of the Yamanaya culture. These migrations brought new cultural practices, technologies, and possibly the Proto-Indo-European language family to these regions, influencing the subsequent cultural development in Europe. Not only that, the Yamanaya people are characterized by their nomadic, pastoral lifestyle, which was significantly enhanced by the domestication of horses. And they were like one of the first people to do it. This advancement allowed for the increased mobility, more effective herding, and the development of new strategies in warfare. And not only that, the creation of centaurs. That's right. Centaurs are actually a real freaky result of horseman crossbreeding. It was not like centaurs how we picture them today, though. It was more like, imagine a grotesque front. So like the front half is just like the chest and like enclosed neck of a man, and that the back half has like some sort of like hooves, but the bones are like kind of jittered and splintered out, like they're broken apart at different pieces. The skeletal remains of one of these proto-centaurs, or really just attempted centaurs, were found in this battle, actually. It led many historians to start questioning, what the hell is going on? Why was this sort of like experimentation done? And really, it just comes down to the human want or desire to do whatever the hell they want, and to fuck. And that's sorry. Man, I need to stop. I was getting there. I was like, man, yeah, no, that'd be funny if like just make people think centaurs were real for a second. No, nothing like that happened. The mobility afforded by horse domestication may have played a role in the widespread dissemination of the cultural traits and their interactions with other cultures. Because I mean, think about it. Like before, like horse domestication had spread and was like commonplace. Most other cultures and most other people would probably see those beasts and think, food, and not think, oh, hey, wait, I can use it to, ride on, and then it'll go really fast for me. And so when they saw the people riding them, they probably were like, oh, shit, yeah, we could have done that, shit. And probably blew their fucking minds, it was awesome. It was just like super cool to see. It's like when cars were introduced to people for the first time. They probably, people who saw that are like, oh, what? We can make the machines go before. Oh, dude. Stuff like that. Or nowadays when like we were first introduced to AI and, we realized we could use AI to make a bunch of random shit. It was like, oh, the computer could like talk to me? What? Whoa. Again, more stuff like that. And so I imagine technological advancements are at every age. That's how I imagine people were when the flying machine was invented. Or like whoever Leonardo da Vinci showed his idea of a helicopter to. Like, I bet that blew their minds. And in the same way, the domestication of horses blew these people's minds, and that everybody wanted to get on horses. Okay, they wanted to get on that horse, start riding it. But this culture on this culture would emphasize on mobility. This would have also influenced warfare tactics in the Bronze Age as well, as essentially as soon as they were done domesticating, horse warfare was immediate. I'm talking like maybe 100, 200 years pass and it's horse warfare. That's how big of an impact it had. Okay. Everybody needed to figure that out. You used horses for hunting. You can chase after animals much easier. It was a game changer. So while primarily pastoralists, the Yemeni were also part of extensive trade networks that connected them with distant regions. These networks facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies, such as metallurgy. And they would learn metallurgy from other cultures, probably. Who knows? Maybe the Minoans, like I had mentioned. But the main impact of this is their genetic legacy, as it is very evident in the modern European gene pool, indicating a significant lasting impact. This genetic influence, coupled with cultural and linguistic contributions, underscores the Yemeni's role in shaping this early history of Europe. Okay. Another culture that was important is the beaker culture. The beaker culture, which again, I feel like this is semi-obvious, but they're named after their distinctive bell-shaped beakers, was a widespread phenomena across Western Central Europe from around 2800 to 1800 BCE. Again, kind of around in the same general area. Their culture may have also disseminated into these groups that fought at Tollense Valley. I'm going to keep re-emphasizing this so that people understand that I'm not just like naming off all these cultures and doing it just showcase that I wanted to like research a bunch of Bronze Age European cultures. No. These were cultures around the area, besides, again, the Greek ones. I understand the Greek ones are very far away, and they probably had no impact on this. Hell, even the Yamani culture. No, the Yamani culture would have had an impact on this, especially with like the domestication of horses. However, but the Greek ones were just cool to mention. And again, because I do want to study them or do like, I don't know, maybe I could do like go over the whole Bronze Age collapse one day. That whole theory, and well, not really theory, but that whole part of humanity's existence is crazy to examine. So it was more or less just mentioning them, noting that they were around. They were far away, though, weren't really interacting with the people at the time. Well, they had trade routes that could have connected them to these people. But again, it doesn't really matter all that much. So anyways, this culture played a significant role during the transition from the Neolithic to Bronze Age. It's very characterized by its unique pottery, burial practices, and spread of technologies and ideas. Again, mostly the pottery. They're really good with the beaker pots. Very useful. Very, very useful. Let me tell you. I don't know why I'm trying to talk like Obama right now, but I am. Let me tell you. The Bronze Age. Crazy. That's what I tell Michelle every day. Bronze Age. Don't mess with it. Don't look into it. Okay. The beaker culture was not a centralized civilization, but rather a widespread set of practices and material culture that appeared in various regions across Europe. The widespread nature facilitated cultural exchanges and the diffusion of new ideas among different prehistoric European communities. The beaker people are often associated with the spread of metallurgy, including copper and bronze working. It's thanks to them that metallurgy is as common as it was during the Bronze Age. You know, it's these guys. This was a very defining feature, obviously, of the Bronze Age. Otherwise, it would have been called the Tin Age or the Copper Age. But it wasn't. It was the Bronze Age. Their movement and interactions across Europe could have indirectly influenced Tollense Valley. Again, through the spread of their... And obviously it did. I mean, the guys came up with fucking bronze. Of course it did. Duh. So the advancements in metalworking that they did was primarily for metal tools and weapons. It was a very significant technological leap, impacting society's warfare, agriculture, primarily agriculture for them, and craft practices. The spread of these metallurgic techniques definitely played a role in the types of weapons and tools used in these conflicts at the Tollense Valley battle. As we can see, the bronze tipped arrows and the bronze fucking weapons that were used to slice and puncture through dudes' heads. Even the knives that were used. Like there's one of the skeletons they found. There's a rib wound that they initially thought were like this. The rib had like fractured and like split, but then when a little more closely examined, they could see it was like too like precise for it, and so it was like two separate knife like stabbings. Like the guy went boom boom when he stabbed him in the chest, which is crazy. I don't know. It sounds brutal, man. War sounds like hell in every era. But yeah, so with that, we can see that these bronze knives were used in the battle, definitely used in other battles across Europe. But another defining feature of the beaker people are their beaker burials, which often included the deceased individual being interred with pottery, metal objects, and sometimes archery equipment. This burial practice suggests a certain level of individual wealth and status, indicating emerging social stratification within these communities. Understanding the social structures of beaker groups can provide insights into the societal organization of other contemporary cultures in the area, and especially around the area, for the groups that fought at the battlefield. Recent genetic studies have also suggested that significant population movement during the period associated with the beaker culture. This genetic influx seen in various parts of Europe implies a period of considerable mobility and demographic change, potentially leading to conflicts over resources, territory, and trade routes, factors that definitely contributed to large-scale battles. Again, like those at Tollense Valley. So, this is kind of painting again, a clearer picture. Like, oh, yeah, all these people, they were moving around, lots of trade going on, lots of battles being fought over these trade routes, like I'd mentioned at the beginning of the episode. But now we have the Wessex culture. The Wessex culture was thriving in southern Britain from around 2000 to 1400 BCE, 200 years before the battle took place. It was notable for its rich burials and its connection to monumental structures like Stonehenge. The Wessex culture is distinguished by its elaborate burial mounds, known as barrows, which often contained high-status individuals accompanied by a wealth of grave goods. These goods included finely crafted bronze weapons, gold ornaments, and pottery, reflecting both the skill of Wessex artisans and the wealth and status of the buried individuals. Such elaborate burials indicate a well-defined social hierarchy with a powerful elite class, not unlike those found dead at the valley. But again, they probably weren't there. However, they might have been. There might have been like some like elite warrior mercenary group from the Wessex culture that just like showed up and was like, yeah, I'll fight with you guys. And some of them died. This social complexity could parallel the societal structures of contemporary European cultures, potentially including those involved in the Tollense Valley Battlefield. These people are closely associated with the later stages of Stonehenge, one of Europe's most famous prehistoric monuments. Their involvement in the construction and use of this monumental structure reflects a society capable of large-scale organization and possibly with religious or ceremonial practices of regional significance. It's also said when they completed the structure of Stonehenge, Britain was able to gain a profit, which then increased their faith output for the rest of time, which is why the Catholic Church became so strong in Britain and why it was like such a powerhouse and like, had such control and impact on all these other cultures and tried to erase all the other religions. It's because Stonehenge was like the first one to introduce a prophet into this game of civilization that we play in real life. I'm going crazy. I'm sorry. Whenever I would think about history, the dead game comes into my mind, and it's fun. But while there's no direct link between Stonehenge and prophets appearing out of nowhere or the Tollense Valley, the Wessex culture's ability to mobilize resources and people for such grand projects could mirror the organizational capabilities required for a large-scale conflict. So they would have had essentially the capability of getting 2,500 dudes to go fight and die for them. So, yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to introduce. However, there does seem to have been a retreat. So whoever the aggressor was lost that conflict. So not only that, but they also had the same metalwork, flourishing of metalwork, particularly in bronze, but also in gold. Their metal objects are found across a wide area of Britain and even into continental Europe, indicating a very extensive trade network. Such networks could have facilitated these exchanges or could have bought some people to go fight and, fuck up some people that were messing with one of their trade routes. Could have bought a bunch of people because they were the only ones that were really good with, well, not the only ones, but people who were really good with gold. And so their descendants or a, burgeoning kingdom or tribe could have, again, used some of this culture's tools or wealth or trade networks to have started a conflict. The aggressors do seem to have come from the south, which is typically attributed to the Lustation. No, the Urnfield, and then Lustation would have been the defenders. But anyways, doesn't matter. Another important culture here, and another one that we have to heavily consider, as it is very close to Tollense Valley at the time, is the Nordic Bronze Age. So this was spanning from, this is not even really like a culture or like a people, but the Nordic Bronze Age in general with the Nords, the Scandinavians, were around at the time of the battle, and they lasted well after the battle as well into 500 BCE. This era is characterized by very advanced maritime trade. So much like the Greeks, the Swedes or the northern people, my ancestors, were super into traveling around on boats and exploring and shit. They also had distinctive rock carvings and unique cultural practices, which set it apart from other contemporary European cultures. Like very, very unique and very different, very distinct. So one of the hallmarks of the Nordic Bronze Age was this maritime trade network. It was established by the Scandinavian societies. Their seafaring capabilities allowed them not only to trade extensively with neighboring regions, but also to connect with more distant cultures across Europe. This prowess facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies, as like every other culture, contributing to this richness of the Nordic Bronze Age. The ability to navigate and trade across the seas could have indirect influences on the regions around Tollense Valley, particularly in terms of the spread of trade goods and cultural practices. It would have also had, if there's a trade route there for like tin and copper and shit, they would have had, with the close proximity to some of the lands for some of the Scandinavian societies that were nearby Germany and Austria, they would have had some stake in the game to make sure that shit was protected. Potentially would have had some influence or could have sent some men to go fight with some people to protect that trade route. Okay. But this period is also well known for its rock carvings and petroglyphs found in places like Tanum in Sweden. These carvings depict various aspects of life, including the scenes of ships, warriors, animals, and rituals. The rock art provides valuable insights into the beliefs, practices, and social structure of the Nordic Bronze Age groups. While there's no direct connection between these carvings and, again, the battle, it's just something cool. I just wanted to tell you guys because it's cool. Okay? Like, don't even worry about me talking about it at all. I was looking at pictures and I was like, this is dope. I need to include this. But no, it is important to understand like how the culture could have impacted other cultures around its area. And again, we don't see any of the carvings or metalwork, particularly from that group so far that we found in I shouldn't say we, but the historians have found, because I'm just some guy who Googled a bunch of shit, went and looked it up, studied a bit of history in college, and I'm now trying to present information to you through podcasts. So I'm just some dude, not like a pro at this either. This is more just like for fun and just a way for me to keep studying more while I'm out of school and I'm working full time, and keep learning more and not pay $10,000 probably not a semester, but like a year at some college. Up to like 100,000. College is expensive, but I can research for free, basically. So, yeah. And this is more of like a hobby and just something I like doing. Okay. However, something that is important and actually may have been related to it is their advanced metalwork and weaponry. This area produced a variety of bronze artifacts for the Nordic regions. And these tools, weapons, and ornaments were of a high level of craftsmanship. Many like swirly patterns in their rings, many distinct looking metalworks. Their weapons had like distinct markings on them. Sometimes like runes were carved into, not necessarily like, there's some runes that were carved into weapons. And sorry, I was looking for, there we go. The runic, so they would carve runes into their weapons. And while we haven't found anything yet, as soon as we see a rune carved into a weapon at the battlefield, or we find a weapon with like some markings left on it, despite being in a riverbank and possibly have been eroded over time, and the runes could be gone. If we find something that was preserved well, then we'd know like, oh, hey, it was the fucking Swedes or the Scandinavian tribes. One of them came over and was like, hey, fuck you, stop touching our shit. Don't mess with our trade routes. And these assholes from the south came up and were like, no, we want this trade route. Fuck you, get out of here. soon as we find that, then we can be like, okay, that's what happened. Okay. But not only that, another big part of why I'm mentioning them is their societal structure and warfare. This is another culture or group of peoples, but the evidence points to a society with clear social stratification. This is very indicated by the grave goods and like the wealth and stuff found in burial sites, people buried with their swords and with their weapons. This social structure, along with the presence of, like bows, other things like food, like not really food, but like just like objects of wealth, suggests that their warfare played a significant role in their society. The militaristic aspects of this culture could parallel the structures found in this Tollense Valley conflict very well, and they would have had that capability of amassing an army that was of that size to combat people. Because again, back then, that was insane to do, and this is one of those cultures that had that capability of doing that. Another one that we're going to mention, the Tumulus culture. They were in Central Europe from around 1600 to 1200 BCE, so they would have died out right during the Tollense Valley battle. So who knows? Maybe it was their culture that died out right at the battle. They died there in one day. But this culture is named after distinctive burial mounds or tumuli that are a hallmark of the culture. It represents a crucial phase for Middle Bronze Age during this time, because their culture only really lasted for 400 years. But they also had social stratification as well. They had a huge presence of weapons, jewelry, and other valuables in their burials. And it suggested that they had a warrior elite class. And so this social complexity, with the very apparent emphasis on warrior status and power, it essentially is like, they potentially could have been involved. It potentially could have been, the one of the aggressors. We also have the Terramare culture in Italy. I'm not going to go over them too much, but they had distinctive settlements and urban organization. They were more of like an agriculture and societal structure based culture here. They also had metallurgy and trade, and had a lot of connections and influences. They had a bunch of trade routes and migration practices that could have helped them spread into the areas up to around Germany even of Bronze Age Europe. So that it would have had a big impact on society here. What's interesting, though, is the decline of the Terramare culture around 1150 BCE was part of broader shifts occurring in the late Bronze Age. The end of this culture and the transition to subsequent cultural phases reflect the dynamic nature of these societies. But this was primarily done and driven by the population movements that they had, and a lot of changes that happened in trade networks as these trade routes became more contained, more controlled by certain tribes or areas in that region. They would have, again, not have had as much power, and so the people would have migrated and moved away, lived in different cultures that had more opportunities, more advancements for their family, and giving them, a better chance at life. But they're not that important. I just wanted to briefly mention them because they were there. But we also have now this is again one of the other cultures that were at least is thought to have been involved currently by historians, and that is the Urnfield culture. This culture flourished in the late Bronze Age from around 1300 to 750 BCE in Central Europe. It is most notably recognized for its cremation burial rites. This cultural phase represents, and yeah, that's right, the cremated people. If you didn't, again, it's kind of cool that they were doing that back in the day. They understood that the earth did not have that much fucking room, and the dead needed to be burned. Okay. Anyways, they were part again of this transition in the European Bronze Age, and becoming more complex society, a social structure. The urn field culture, named after this distinctive burial practice, where the deceased were cremated and their ashes placed in urns, which were then buried in fields. Using Grandpa's ashes to make the corn grow. That's the way to do it. That's the way we did it in my family, and we'll continue to do it for the next 3,000 years. Tell you what, we never had better corn than when we started burying our grandpas in the cornfield. Okay? This practice marked a significant departure from the earlier tumulus or burials of the tumulus culture that I had mentioned earlier. And the widespread adoption of cremation could reflect changing beliefs and social structures within these societies. Understanding these changes is crucial for comprehending the societal evolution during the Late Bronze Age and how these shifts may have influenced cultural practices, including those related to warfare and conflict resolution. And during this period, there is a continued development in bronze metallurgy, specifically with improvements in the production of tools, weapons, and ornaments. Primarily weapons, because you need to make more weapons to protect your shit. And if you didn't have enough weapons to protect your shit, well, then there's no point in having any shit because your shit was going to get taken with someone with better weapons. So you had to make better weapons yourself. It just makes sense. And later with this culture, there was the introduction of ironworking towards the very end of the Urnfield period. And this really demonstrates how the society, with its advanced technological capabilities, would have been some of the people capable of fighting or causing a war with another culture or group of people. But it was just really cool. Like, these guys started ironworking. They weren't one of the first, but they were part of that transition from bronze to iron, for the Iron Age. It's really cool. But this Urnfield culture was part of an extensive network of trade and cultural exchanges that spanned across Europe. These interactions facilitated this spread of ideas, goods, and people, as everyone else's did. And so, again, and this is why it's so difficult for us to pinpoint exactly who the fuck fought who in this battle. Everybody was touching everybody. Everybody was exchanging ideas and food and shit. And, everybody kind of had a stake in trade routes here. But specifically for tin in 1200 BCE, that's what we wanted to look for. And so this is why I'm bringing up all these cultures who definitely needed to make sure their tin was protected. But not only that, we also have settlement patterns and societal organization. The Urnfield period saw a change in settlement patterns with an increase in fortified settlements and hill forts. This shift could have shown a response to increasing social tensions or external threats, suggesting that their period of time, so like about 100 years into their existing, was marked by more conflicts than previously thought and a need for defense. And it could really mirror, or really maybe even Tollense Valley was kind of like the breaking point where after that battle, they're like, you know what? We're going to build our homes here. And we're going to surround it with a bunch of shit. So if someone comes to knock, and we can kill him from behind the shit that we just built. That could make sense as well. This, again, indicating why historians currently think they were possibly one of the two combatants. Anyways, after the end of them, we'd have the transition of their culture into the Hallstatt culture, which is known for its early Iron Age advancements. It marks an important period of cultural and technological development in Central Europe. And they were just, they were a big culture, had a lot of influence. We're around the area where this battle took place, and probably were a part of the battle, more than likely. And they would have had some of the most stake in it. We also have the El Argar culture in Spain. I'm going to only briefly mention them before we get to the Lusatian culture. But this culture also had early urbanism and societal organization. They were the urban practices that were happening in the El Argar culture indicate like kingdoms and like essentially like a civilization rising up. Duh, but sorry. But they're indicative of how influential these people were and how influential the culture was, as everyone was wanting to stay there. And they're like, yeah, I'll live here. They also had advanced metallurgy and a lot of influence as well. They had a huge trade network, cultural exchange, and they also had the social stratification and burial practices present in the cultures that were noticed. However, like the Aegean Bronze Age cultures, way too far, also died off way too soon to have been involved in the battle. Now let's get to the Lusatian culture. The Lusatian culture existed in the later Bronze Age and early Iron Age, also around 1300 to 500 BCE, like our boys, the Urnfield culture, who's burying grandpa's ashes down the cornfield to make them corns grow. And they're going to do it. And most of what is now Poland and parts of the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Eastern Germany, and Western Ukraine. It covers the periods Montelius III, early Lusatian culture, to the 5th of the Northern European chronological scheme. It has been associated or closely linked with the Nordic Bronze Age as well. So, with them being so close to the Nordic Bronze Age, the influence that they would have had, the trade routes that would have been between, again, the Tollense Valley and potentially part of the Scandinavian tribes, demonstrates how they would have, been involved in this little fight here. They also had Hallstatt influences from Urnfield, so it could have been more of like a civil war thing between the Lusatian and the Urnfield people. But this can also be seen particularly in ornaments, their fibulae, pins, and weapons. This culture developed as the preceding Triciniac culture experienced influences from the tumulus culture of the Middle Bronze Age, essentially incorporating the local communities into the socio-political network of Iron Age Europe. It formed part of the Urnfield systems found from the eastern France, southern Germany, and Austria to Hungary, and the Nordic Bronze Age in the northwestern Germany and Scandinavia. It was followed by the Billendorf culture of the early Iron Age in the west in Poland. The Lusatian culture has spanned part of the Iron Age as well. There's only a terminological difference between the two early Iron Age cultures there. They were succeeded by the Montelius the 7th in the northern ranges around the mouth of Vistula by the Pomeranian culture spreading south. Lusatian type burials were first described by the German pathologist and archaeologist Rudolf Virchow. The name refers to Lusatia area in eastern Germany, Brandenburg, and Saxony, which is Brandenburg is pretty close to Tollense Valley, or New Brandenburg is pretty close to Tollense Valley. The name refers to the Lusatia area in eastern Germany, Western Poland. Oh, sorry, I just said that. My brain right now is like going not quite schizo, but I just need to have like a track reader, and I'm just reading off of like the paper that I wrote. So, and a lot of this information is pulled off of Wikipedia, and I did check the links, the sources here. The sources did seem legit, though a lot of them were in German. I did my best to, fact check it. There's like a little fact check finder, and then I looked on, and again, I used Reddit, but like on the Ask a Historian, and I had them link me to other sources, and some of the links that were used in the Wikipedia were then linked also in that when I asked. So again, I tried fact checking for this culture here, but sorry if you know something that I don't. But anyways, the Polish archaeologist Józef Kosterewski, who started in 1934 to conduct extensive excavations of Lusatian settlements of Biskupin, hypothesized that the Lusatian culture was a predecessor of later cultures that belonged to the early Slavs. Modern archaeologists, such as both K. Godowski and P. Fucking Polish names, god damn it, Kaczanowski, hold the view that the ethnic geography of Bronze Age Central Europe then included peoples whose languages and ethnic identity are simply unknown. So similar to the Urnfield culture, burial was by cremation. Inhumations are rare. The urn is usually accompanied by numerous secondary vessels. Metal grave gifts are sparse, but there are numerous hoards, such as Kopanoau, Pomerania, that contain rich metalwork, both bronze and gold, similar again to the Wessex societies over there. Graves containing molds, like at Batoune, Saxony, and Tuyeres, attest to the production of bronze tools and weapons at the village level. And then the royal tomb of Seddon, Brandenburg, Germany, covered by a large earthen barrow, contain Mediterranean imports like bronze vessels and glass beads. Cemeteries can be quite large and contain thousands of graves. So they're like very, very into making sure everyone was buried and, kind of like all near each other. So well-known settlements include Biskupen in Poland and Buch near Berlin. There are open villages and fortified settlements, Bergwall or Gord, on hilltops or in swampy areas, again, like the Urnfield had developed later. The ramparts were constructed of wooden boxes filled with soil or stones. Its economy was mainly based on arable agriculture, as is attested by numerous storage pits. Wheat, or emmer, and 6-row barley formed the basic crops. So maybe not corn. Maybe they didn't have corn back then, but they were growing that emmer, using Grandpa's ashes to grow that emmer over there in the Urnfield. So together with millet, rye, and oats, peas, broad beans, lentils, and gold of pleasure, Camelina sativa, flax was grown, and remains of domesticated apples, pears, and plums have been found as well. Cattle and pigs were the most important domestic animals because they were the most delicious, followed by sheep, goats, and horses and dogs, also descending in order of how tasty they are. And that's how I would rank my domesticated animals as well. It's like how tasty are these pieces of shit? I love dogs and horses. I've never had horse meat or dog meat. I have had sheep and goat meat though, and not bad at all. But yeah, pigs definitely a lot more tasty than any of them. For me, it goes cow, pig, and then the rest of those in that order. So pictures on the Iron Age urns from Silesia attest horse riding, but horses were used to draw chariots as well. Hunting was practiced as bones of red and roe deer, or bison, elk, hare, fox, and wolf attest, but it did not provide much of the meat consumed. It's probably the pigs. The numerous frog bones found at Biskupen may indicate that frogs' legs were eaten as well, and that's where the French got it from. It's these assholes. Just kidding. But no, they could have. They could have gotten it from these guys who then are like, yeah, guys, you can eat the frog legs. It's delicious. Get some like animal fat and then soak it in there for a little bit while you're heating it up. It's really good. If you get cow and you churn like the liquid that comes out of it that Jerry discovered the other week, you can get something that's kind of like a little bit weird, but if you put like this spice on it or like salt on it, it gets you put it like on bread or something. It's really good. Anyways, so the main command here, obviously with the Urnfield culture and the Lusatian culture, primary reasons for that are how closely the artifacts and weapons discovered in the battlefield match those found in these cultures. This is primarily the artwork and how the material is crafted. And the idea here is, especially since the Lusatian culture seems to have evolved or been part of the Urnfield culture, it could have been like an early schism which really led to the two cultures leading to distinguish themselves from another. And it could have been, again, an argument over like how this trade route was supposed to be handled, who is going to use it for what. And the two people who argued were just capable enough to amass a huge ass army, with the Lusatian culture potentially being able to get Scandinavian tribes to come in and fight for them. Again, there's no indication here, though, of Scandinavian tribes from that area being involved in the battle yet, that we know yet. The site is still being uncovered. There's still a bunch of DNA testing being done. However, what's more insane is the implication that this battle really has for our understanding of the Northern European Bronze Age. Cultures that were once thought to be peaceful now present a battlefield littered with not just farmers who happened to be warriors, just like they were kind of forced to be warriors, but veterans of the battlefield. These warriors that were found. I'll kind of get into that here. But in that article that I had found, some of the archaeologists that he was talking with or had gotten information from said that the skeletal remains found on the battlefield showed signs of old wounds and basically a bunch of wounds that had healed over time, a bunch of old scarring that had healed. And what that demonstrated to them is that these were seasoned veterans. These were guys who knew how to fight. They weren't just farmers like most of their life and then fucking shut out of nowhere. Another interesting find was that the DNA studies showed that these people were not able to consume milk yet. So that's an interesting genetic discovery. That is something that also will indicate certain cultures and peoples. Most likely the, again, Erdfield and Lusatian cultures. Some of their people were not able to drink milk during that time. Which again, this is also something they thought that like had already been done. Like that genetic spread had already happened and people were able to consume milk. But not for some of these guys. They were very intolerant of the milk. But these men who were buried underneath the banks of the Tollense Valley were not just thrown into battle via happenstance and out of necessity. The wounds and markings and other archaeological evidence really do point to this fact that the men were organized and rallied before their battle. They were part of an advanced military or hired mercenary band for that area. And, you guys may be asking yourself, okay, that's cool. You presented me a bunch of, evidence or a bunch of like information really about Bronze Age cultures. But why the fuck does this matter, Tyler? Well, number one, it changes historians' whole freaking world, as now they have a quest to uncover who organized these militaries and which cultures were capable of something like that in Northern Europe. They have an idea, but they don't have like a group of people or like what their kingdom or civilization was really called. They just have like the cultures, like the cultures that were involved in the battle. Number two, I believe that it is every civilization's job to preserve its history. And unfortunately, much of the Bronze Age European history has been lost or has false ideas presented as fact due to there being little evidence to dispute them. Tollense Valley Battlefield offers historians a chance to investigate deeper into an age where there are a ton of unknowns and will allow us a chance to paint a much clearer picture of our past, and maybe we can learn things that will help our future. And that is all for today's Historical Quarrel. Well, you guys made it to the end of the episode. Congrats. Hope that was a fun one. Quick little, I guess, like, I don't know, my thoughts on the subject. I really found today's episode, this whole idea of what this is to be fascinating. It was really interesting to kind of deep dive into it, learn a bunch about a whole bunch of other Bronze Age cultures. I was trying to figure out who it might have been myself by really like deep diving, and I was going to essentially look at migratory patterns of different groups into the area and see if like any of them would have like ended up near Tollense Valley, besides the Erdfield and the Lusatian cultures. And it led me into learning about the Kurgan hypothesis, and I had to learn about how the Turkic and Slavic languages developed, or at least the Proto-Indo-European languages developed, which was really cool. Bunch of information that isn't really necessary for the episode. I mean, I kind of demonstrated like the cool parts of the battle, I feel like, especially from that opening descriptor or description of the battle by Andrew. Oh my gosh, what's his name? The guy who wrote that on science.org. It was a really fascinating article. I'll link it in the description for the show today, because that's, I read through that, and that's what was like, it got me to be like, yeah, I'm going to do this as an episode. So, but yeah, it was really cool. I love the DNA evidence that they'd done on it too, to determine who was potentially there. I mean, the fact that they couldn't drink milk was kind of nuts. The fact that they couldn't, drink certain types of milk. They couldn't drink like cow's milk, or goat milk, I think. And then how the weapons were used, how the damage to the damage to the bones then allowed historians and archaeologists to figure out like, oh, these people had like a bunch of freaking old wounds on them. And for a while there, they originally thought the battle might have like even been, over like a couple weeks or like a month or two. And then most of the killing blows that they found were actually indicative of a, like in a day, like everybody died within the same day. So the battle was just fought in a day, which is crazy to me. But there's not like a bunch of evidence yet to support that. It's just what's being talked about now. And that was kind of like the tricky part with this episode. It was, do I just spew a bunch of like the purported ideas that like they're trying to figure out still? Do I just kind of give indications of it? Or do I present like, hey, these cultures were around at that time, or they influenced the other cultures at that time that would, that did exist, or these areas and potential tribes that are around at that time, they would have learned this from like this culture, like the Yamnaya culture being the first ones to domesticate horses. And yeah, I know. I mean, they had like 2,000 years to kind of teach that to everybody else before this battle took place. But still, I don't know, it's important to bring up because they were the people who started that horse domestication. They were the reason why. So I figured going that route was better. I also just didn't have as much time to go into it as deep as I wanted to. And then I don't know how you guys are with that. Some of the episodes where I go deeper, I feel like don't perform as well. It just kind of indicates that you guys maybe don't like that. You may not say it to my face or, leave a mark, but I'm trying to figure that out with the subtle information that I do see. So I figured just given that base information, kind of going over what cultures existed, how the influences spread and impacted Europe was going to be better. If you like that, you preferred that, just kind of overview, brief taste of it, understanding the battle and like the area at the time, but not necessarily going that deep into everything. I mean, I briefly talked about the DNA evidence. I could have gone way more in depth with it, pulled up the reports and been like, reading through it. And I don't know, I might have made a joke or two being like, yeah, and their dicks were like 10 inches long, all of them. And it's weird. They all got smaller. I don't know. Something like that. I don't know. And some of you don't like my bits, and I understand that. That's fine. But I need to dig around a little bit for me. The show is primarily for me. It's for me to have fun and talk about something that I found fascinating. So, but with that being said, I don't know. You guys let me know. First off, big thank you for the feedback on last week's episode. I saw a lot of you guys liked that, enjoyed it. Not as much on YouTube, but I was kind of worried because and this has been a big worry for a lot of podcasters, is their downloads were decreasing quite a bit. And I think primarily it's due to the fact that if someone follows you on Apple, it doesn't like automatically download anymore. And I did notice a huge decrease on my Apple downloads, and then it kind of picked up again, particularly with my board game episode. So I am definitely planning on doing that more. I'm going to get the craft of that down. I'm thinking more of like taking an ancient board game, breaking down its rules. And it's going to be much shorter. It's just going to be much shorter because of the nature of it. But just take the game, maybe see if there's like a downloadable version of it online of someone who's recreated it, play it. Probably take a modern game, compare the two, demonstrate how the rules are similar, and I don't know, maybe just give like a review. Just gonna be like 0 out of 5 stars, not creative enough, not enough strategy, not enough luck, definitely not running around to the end of a racetrack enough. So no role playing. 0 out of 5 stars. Don't like it. Hate it. Something like that. So if I do going forward want to do episodes like that, I think I'll just have it be a separate show. I'm thinking about calling it like Ancient Tabletops, and they'll just be a separate show. And when I release that and when it's ready, I'll let you guys know. And for this show, I'll continue the battles and stuff and like the deep dive in. I think I want to do more subjects like this with history, where it's like not necessarily like this. There's a bunch of stuff written about it. It's just more like, hey, this is an event that happened. This is what we know about it. And it's pretty cool. And that's kind of like why I like history. I love stuff that's like unknown. It can still be explored. And like the whole like search for Atlantis, and the seafaring people, stuff like that, where there's a lot of unknowns. There's some ideas as to like where it might be or like who it might be, but no one's found it yet. Or like no one really knows exactly what's going on yet. And recorded history is very cool too. I enjoy the court politics, the intrigue, the crazy shenanigans that happens, the insanity of some of the like Roman emperors, for example, like in the insane stuff that they do. I enjoy that. But I really, really enjoy this aspect of our ancient world where we can take something and we can break it down into more of like just like it's a very simple, like, hey, like this happened. These people were like this. I don't know, like with the board games. I really like that aspect of, ancient civilization too, where like, hey, these cultures, they like playing games too. And it demonstrates this interconnectedness because sometimes I feel that people from like 3,000 years ago are so different from me, or so like, it's almost like they're a different species entirely. But in all reality, no, we're still the same. Like there's a lot of like similarities here. There's a lot of like similar wants, desires, and needs that they had to fill that I want to fill now. And so, and events like this with the battlefield, where and I know this is separate from what I was just talking about, but with the battlefield, we get to see how history can sometimes have a wrong idea of what a certain area was like during a certain period of time. What was once thought to be peaceful farmers, now we're pretty sure that they had a bunch of fucking military dudes, and they were ready for war. But I mean, like, why else would you develop weapons as a society if you weren't preparing for battle, right? Or like you had a fear, or like you needed to prepare for a fight. So there's also the idea that this group of people, and I just read about this, but the group of people that fought here could have potentially just been fighting. I saw one that was like, yeah, that was probably aliens, and they were all part of the same civilization, the same culture, the Urnfield culture. That's why the Lusatian and the Urnfield culture are so closely related, because they were the same. And I don't know. I thought that was hilarious. They're like, yeah, they fought aliens, and that's why there's like 5,000 dead people. I'm like, no, probably not. They was probably just disputing over a tin trade route, and it's probably between these two cultures here, or like civilizations that were more of a part of either or culture, and that had connections to the Nordic Bronze Age, like kingdoms and civilizations that were popping up over there. So stuff like that, man. I don't know. It was, and I thought that was fascinating. It's just like an interesting part of history. The unknowns are always just kind of fun to kind of try to dip your toes into, try to understand a little bit more of. I think it was the Turks' fault. It's always the Turks' fault. Fucking Turks are everywhere, man. They rode up on their horses, tried to take over some goddamn trade route. They're in Germany for some reason. They're way out of their reach, but they're like, you know what? We're going to dick around with these proto-Germans. And then the proto-Germans were like, hey, listen, let's go get our Scandinavian bros and fight these people. That's what I think happened. Probably not. No, that would have been as a ridiculous amount of travel for that trade route, unless they had like some expansive trade network that they were trying to connect, and Tollense Valley just happened to be right there, which would be nuts. If something like that happened, that would indicate like a huge ass empire that was happening over there that spanned into Germany. Maybe I should have looked into that. Maybe I should have seen if like at that time, because the Roman Empire they weren't doing that much in that area at all. They didn't really expand that far north, and they always dealt with like the German and the British tribes and kind of called them just savages. So they would have had there would be no indication of them being from over there. And like the Turks especially would have been digging around over there, but that's whatever. Beside the point. So stuff like that. I love that. This show will probably become just a real weird exploration of history. So I hope you stick around for that. If you enjoyed today's episode, please, leave a review. If you're on YouTube watching, like and subscribe. I'll keep doing more of this. I'm gonna try to do more with the editing side of things, but I have a full-time job. It's, I don't have like the skills to just edit in like a single night. And really, I probably could just like start recording a little earlier and try and get stuff, done in like a reasonable amount of time. But I don't know. I need to figure stuff out, kind of figure out how that rhythm works with video editing. So if you're watching on the video and it's shit, I'm sorry. Again, I am trying to do better there. Hopefully that aspect will improve over time. If so, anyone has advice or recommendations, let me know. I'll listen. I will clearly listen. If you have advice or recommendations for the show in general, I'll listen. Just let me know. I mean, I'm not going to like sit here and just be like, you say I suck, so fuck you. I think there was like one guy who was like, man, your shit's like so bad. And it got like mostly you. And that's a fair criticism. And, but honestly, the criticism sounds more of like, he just doesn't like how I do my show in general. And the show may not be for him, that's okay. You can let me know that. But if I'm doing something and I'm building an audience, that audience is currently liking what I do and how I do it, which I feel like I've been doing over time at this point now. And then if I do something and that audience that I've been building doesn't like it, that's a little bit more of like, okay, I need to sit down, take a look at what I'm doing and change. Whereas someone that's seemingly new to the show and I've never seen them, communicate or try and like comment on anything else, I don't know. I feel a little less of an indication to listen to you. There's people that have listened to the show that have commented on the fact that I like to swear or tell a little more obscene jokes, and they feel like it takes away from the show. And so I listen to that. So I've tried to really lessen that as much as I can and make it a little more like, hey, this is what's, it's just like, here's the facts. Might be a joke or two. Instead of like a joke every 3 minutes. Because I got kind of obsessive for a while there, being like, hey, I need to write a joke, and I've got to have a joke at this time. And then, at that point, I may be losing the audience's attention here at the 5 minute mark. So then I got to write a joke here, bring them back in. And then 2 minutes here, bring him back in, 5 minutes. And then I can do another joke, bring him back in. Like I was getting kind of crazy. I was getting really obsessive with it because I was like, then this is how I can increase my retention time, and then hopefully more people will want to listen. And it's like, no, just tell a joke when it feels natural. I don't have to like write out jokes. And if I essentially repeat a joke that someone else has said, I feel like I've been pretty good about being like, hey, that's not my joke. This is who I heard it from. I'm just saying it because I fit here in this context. And because I don't want to be accused of like being a joke thief. That's not my goal at all. If I'm going to write a joke, I want it to be original. I want it to be funny, especially when I was trying to do open mic stand up for a while there. I just don't have the time for that anymore. So I don't know. It was fun though. It was really cool. I have a background in stage theater, and so that was I did that a lot in high school. And so doing open mic, man, I had not gone. It was so weird. The first time I did open mic, I was so nervous. I was like shaking. I was like, oh, dude, I haven't felt this in so long. Had that little that nervous gut feeling. So, I mean, doing that was cool. I don't know. I might try do that again here in the near future, probably after my wife's done with school. And then, but I don't know. We'll see. I got a full-time job, and I got my kids that I'm going to go hang out with. So that's, I got that going for me. So I guess what I'm trying to say is forgive me if the quality is a bit shite. It will improve with time. I don't have as much time that I'd like to dedicate into mastering this craft. And so it's going to take longer than you would typically see on other channels that are growing. But again, I'm going to try. I will attempt to do better. And comment below, comment, let me know of anything. Seriously, I need help. This is me asking. This is not even me being like, hey, no, if you want to, hey, seriously, if you know how to do certain things, and you can, a good tutorial video that I could just watch that isn't going to take me 3 hours to master, for video editing, or just subtle stuff. I mean, YouTube kind of tries to show me stuff, but then I don't really understand what free video is saying. But I think it's probably because they're using a different tool than what I'm using. I'm using DaVinci Resolve. So I don't know. If you know something, or you have, if you have someone that does this shit for free on the side, or does it, I guess, for not that much money, I'm more than happy to send a video and audio file to them, and see what they can come up with. Because again, I don't know that. That'd be cool. Comment below. Let me know. I'm gonna accept and take all the help I can. So that's it for today. You guys have a good one. Adios.